Hello, Croatian learners, and welcome to our channel, Learn Croatian. My name is Ines, and I'd love to talk to you today about the future tense in Croatian. Now, remember, this video is a part of our Croatian tenses series, so please don't forget to check out the other videos as well. And also, this video will cover a lot of the aspects of the future tense, so make sure you check out the timestamps in the description box below to easily navigate through this video. But without further ado, let's learn about the Croatian future tense. The first thing you need to know about the Croatian future is that there are actually two tenses which express the future actions in Croatian. It's the future first and the future second. Now, the good news is, as a beginner speaker, all you need to learn is the future first tense because the future second, although it is used in everyday speech, it's used for more like hypothetical situations and actions, so we don't have to be bothered by it now. Let's learn the future first tense, and let's see how it is formed. It is actually quite easy to form the future first tense. Let's look at one of the sentences which expresses the future, and we will try to dissect it and see what it is made out of. So let's say, I will read a book. In Croatian, you would say, ja ću čitati knjigu. Now let's look at the verb, ću čitati. This verb expresses the future, and it is the future first tense. Let's look at it more closely. You notice that it's a compound verb. It consists of two words, ću and čitati. Now, when you look at this verb, čitati, it should be very familiar to you, right? Because whenever you learn a new verb, you learn it in its infinitive form. All the verbs are listed in their infinitive form in dictionaries. So čitati is actually the infinitive form of the verb. So to form the future first tense, you need the main verb, which is in its infinitive form. Super simple, right? Now the second part, the second building block, if you will, is the auxiliary verb. Now there are two auxiliary verbs in Croatian. One is biti, to be, and the second one, which we need for the future first, is htjeti, or to want. Now, as all auxiliary verbs go, you have the accented, the longer form, and the shorter form of the auxiliary verb. The longer form is ja hoću, ti hoćeš, on, ona, ono hoće, mi hoćemo, vi hoćete, oni hoće. Notice that the third person singular and plural have the same form, hoće. Now, the pronunciation is slightly different. On hoće, it's quick and short, and oni hoće, you sort of extend the E at the end. Now, this is the longer form, accented form. Now, the shorter form of the auxiliary verb, to want, is ću, ćeš, će, ćemo, ćete, će. Again, the difference between the third person singular and plural is only in the pronunciation. So to form the future first tense, you need the shorter form of the verb htjeti plus the infinitive. Ja ću čitati knjigu. Ti ćeš čitati knjigu. On će čitati knjigu. Mi ćemo čitati knjigu. And so on and so on. It's super simple. You need the auxiliary verb to want, htjeti, and the infinitive in order to form the future first tense. Let's jump right in on the word order. Okay, we need to talk about the word order whenever we talk about compound verbs. We talked about this in the past tense. Now, well, let's talk about the future. As auxiliary verbs go, remember that the auxiliary verbs normally always come second in Croatian sentences. All the Croatian sentences normally follow the same pattern: subject, verb, object. So in this sentence, ja ću čitati knjigu, you have the subject. Ja ću čitati is the verb, and knjigu is an object, which is in the accusative case. Now I want to talk about the word order for the future first tense, ću čitati. Notice that if you have the subject, the auxiliary verb comes second, the infinitive comes third, and then the rest is the object or the rest of the sentence. Now, if you want to omit the subject, which is very common in Croatian, because if you remember, the verbs actually already express the person. In some verbs even express gender. So if you want to omit the subject, which is almost always done, then this is when the word order changes. So instead of saying ja ću čitati knjigu, you want to omit the ja, I, and you say čitat ću knjigu. Now, I want you to notice two things in this sentence. What changed? Pay close attention. Ja ću čitati and čitat ću. Well, the first thing I want you to notice is that the infinitive has now taken the first place in the sentence. Čitat ću. The second thing that I want you to notice is that the infinitive looks weird. Now, this is a little quirky rule that the future first tense has. If the infinitive comes before the auxiliary verb htjeti, it loses the ending I. If the infinitive ends on ti, it loses the ending I. So instead of saying čitati ću knjigu, you would write čitat ću knjigu. However, if you want to pronounce it, then you even lose the T in the pronunciation. So you would just say čitat ću knjigu. Or I will write a letter. Pisat ću pismo. Okay, remember to lose the I. Now, with the infinitive verbs that end on ći, like I will go, ići ću, if it comes first, a lot of the times the native speakers will lose the entire ending ći. So literally, you would pronounce I, ću, wherever. I will go wherever. I will go to school. Iću u školu. I will go to school. So instead of saying ići ću u školu, a lot of the natives would say iću u školu, or I will bake cakes. Peću kolače. Okay? So remember this quirky rule. If the infinitive comes after the auxiliary verb, then nothing changes. If the infinitive comes before the auxiliary verb, then the infinitive loses the ending and becomes a little shorter and is pronounced the same as one word together with the auxiliary verb. Pisat ću, čitat ću, and so on. I want to talk about this auxiliary verb, this shorter form of the auxiliary verb. Just remember that you need to place it in the second place in the sentence. There will be moments when your subject is pretty complex. So subject often isn't just one word, it's several words. So for example, my really good friends will look for an apartment. A lot of the times you would hear the locals say the entire subject and then put the auxiliary verb and then the infinitive. Moji dobri prijatelji će tražiti stan. But that's kind of incorrect. The correct way is to put the auxiliary verb in the second place in the sentence. So you would say moji će dobri prijatelji tražiti stan. Literally, my, they want, so they want good friends to look for an apartment. The auxiliary verb will come second, even in the middle of the subject. Again, in practice, when people speak, they will put an entire subject first. Whichever one you choose to use, you won't be incorrect, but you need to remember that the auxiliary verb then has to come right after the subject itself. It can't come somewhere at the end of the sentence. So this is an important rule to remember. Another thing that I want you to be aware of is that the auxiliary verb and the infinitive part of the main verb, they don't have to stand side by side. They can be separated with, I don't know, an adverb or something like that. For example, I will gladly read a book tomorrow. Sutra ću rado čitati knjigu. Right? They don't have to stand one next to another. And in this sentence that I just noticed, you notice that I wanted to accent the time frame, tomorrow, so I placed it in the beginning of the sentence. Sutra ću rado čitati knjigu. Again, ću, the auxiliary verb, has come in the second place. So when it comes to the word order, you need to remember subject, verb, object. If the subject is not omitted, then put the auxiliary verb right after the subject, and then the rest of the sentence as follows, the infinitive and the object. If you omit the subject, then place the infinitive at the beginning, and then again the auxiliary verb comes second. Now, just like in the past tense, the future tense is also a good tense to express those two aspects of every verb. Remember the perfective and imperfective verbs? Well, they are covered in a separate video. However, you need to know that almost every verb in Croatian has this perfective and imperfective aspect. This means that an imperfective verb will express an action which is not finished, and the perfective verb will express an action which is finished. And this is very well visible in the future tense. So you can say, for example, that tomorrow you're planning to read a book, but you're not sure you're going to finish it. You need to use an imperfective verb. So, sutra ću čitati knjigu. Tomorrow, I will read a book, but I won't finish it. But if you want to say that you will read a book tomorrow and finish it, you need to use the perfective form. Sutra ću pročitati knjigu. Now notice that the infinitive is completely different. It's čitati and pročitati. In order to get a finitive form of the verb here, I added the suffix pro. This is not a common rule. It does work for some verbs, and for some it doesn't. Unfortunately, you will just need to learn the both forms. But this is a heads up for you. Don't worry about it for now. I just wanted to give you a heads up in case you hear both. If you see that the root of the verb is the same, the translation is the same, but why is this different? This is the reason why it's different. It's just a perfective and imperfective form of the same verb. Now, don't worry about it now. I just wanted to let you know so you can recognize it, but you can learn this later. Okay, now that we have learned how to form the future first tense, let's learn how to make negative sentences with the future first tense. Now, in order to make negative sentences, you need to negate the auxiliary verb. In order to make the negative form of the auxiliary verb, you would just use the prefix ne onto the shorter form of the auxiliary verb htjeti. So the auxiliary verb is ću, ćeš, će, ćemo, ćete, će. Now, if you want to negate it, you add the ne, ne, as a prefix. Neću, nećeš, neće, nećemo, nećete, neće. Notice again the different pronunciation between the third person singular and the third person plural. Neće and neće. Okay, so to form a negative sentence, you take the positive sentence Ja ću čitati knjigu, and just negate the auxiliary verb. So how would you form then the negative sentence from I will read a book? Ja ću čitati knjigu. The negative sentence will be ja neću čitati knjigu. Excellent. Mi ćemo čitati knjigu. We will read a book. How would you form the negative sentence? Mi nećemo čitati knjigu. Excellent. So now you get you get it how it works. Just negate the auxiliary verb. Now there's a trick here. Again, if you want to omit the subject, right, you simply leave it out. In negative sentences for the future first tense, you just simply leave the subject out and nothing in the sentence changes. Okay? This is easy, right? So, I will read a book. Ja ću čitati knjigu. I won't read a book. Ja neću čitati knjigu. I want to omit the subject and I simply get a sentence. Neću čitati knjigu. Awesome, isn't it? We won't read the book. Mi nećemo čitati knjigu, or simply nećemo čitati knjigu. Now remember, this little trick works only on the negative sentences. Don't use this trick in the positive sentences. So although you can say ja neću čitati knjigu or neću čitati knjigu, it is incorrect to do the same for the positive sentence. Ja ću čitati knjigu. It is incorrect to just say ću čitati knjigu. You have to put the infinitive before the auxiliary verb, just like you learned earlier. The final the final aspect of the future first tense that I want to talk to you about today is how to ask yes and no questions. So in order to ask a yes or no question, you need the longer accented form of the auxiliary verb htjeti. Remember, the longer form of the verb htjeti is hoću, hoćeš, hoće, hoćemo, hoćete, hoće. You might want to learn these by heart. It'll be easier to recall them. So this is the auxiliary verb, and you need the full form, the accented, longer form of the auxiliary verb. And you need an interrogative particle li. So let's look at the word order here. First, you would put the auxiliary verb, the full form, the interrogative particle, and then the infinitive. Will I read a book? Hoću li čitati knjigu? The longer form of the auxiliary verb, interrogative particle, infinitive, and then the object. Hoću li čitati knjigu? Hoćete li čitati knjigu? Will you read a book? Now, if you notice that we have already omitted the subject, if you want to use the subject, you would put the subject right after the interrogative particle li. Hoću li ja čitati knjigu? Hoćete li vi čitati knjigu? Hoćemo li mi čitati knjigu? And so on. I want to remind you that even though the interrogative particle and the auxiliary verb are two words, you would pronounce them as one word. Hoću li. Hoću li čitati knjigu? Hoćeš li čitati knjigu? But remember to write them separately. Okay, so once again, in order to form an interrogative sentence with a yes and no answer, you have to use the longer form of the auxiliary verb, the interrogative particle li, and then the infinitive. Everybody, that was it for today and for this video. I really hope it has been helpful. If you have liked it, please hit the thumbs up and please subscribe or share it with your friends. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Leave a question in the comments below and I will try and get back to you as soon as possible and help answer all of your questions. Thank you so much for your time. Please remember to check out our other videos on our webpage, learncroatian.com. And I hope that you will join me again next time as we uncover more of the Croatian grammar. If you would like to see other videos about other aspects of the language, leave me a comment below and I will put it on the list and you can look out for it in the weeks or months to come. My name is Ines and thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have enjoyed it and I hope you keep learning, listening, talking, speaking Croatian. Keep at it and you will get it. You will get it and you will do great. It's been a pleasure to be with you today. Join me next time. Sretno and doviđenja.